Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF world champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 497 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined on this fine Thursday morning by former heavyweight world title challenger, the main man himself, Mr. Fast Eddie Chambers. Eddie, how are you doing this Thursday?
I'm good, my man. How about you?
Always good when speaking with you, Eddie. We're going to dive straight into the review part of the show. It's just the one card to go over, but obviously it was packed. It went down on DAZN pay-per-view, on Sky Box Office as well, and it was in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London. Let's touch on the undercard. We had Chris Billam-Smith move to 21-2, a unanimous decision over 12 rounds there against Brandon Glanter, now 20-3. Yeah, you know, Chris Billam-Smith obviously gets the win. It's never pretty, I think, seeing Chris Billam-Smith fight. I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, but he never seems to make it easy for himself. It's always a tough fight, so it was a tough fight at times in that fight there. Obviously, he's got a really good jab and he's got a really good punch selection as well at times, Chris Billam-Smith. So there were flashes of that. It's not a bad fighter to come back to after losing a world title. So he's back in the mix with a win like that. And I don't think it will be long before we see him back in having another run against one of the bigger name guys. As for Brandon Glanton, he put in a good enough effort. I wouldn't mind seeing him again. Obviously, there was a lot of trash talk in the build-up, which I thought was very unsavoury, if I'm going to be completely honest. I didn't really like that. I think he crossed the line. Talking about giving another fighter brain damage, and I don't like none of that stuff. That's just way too far for me. But, I guess it probably does get clicks, whether you like it or not. So we probably will see him again because he did make a bit of a splash in the build-up, and he can probably sell a fight in the future. So, yeah, as for his actual boxing, it wasn't too bad. Like I say, it was competitive, but Chris Billam-Smith for me won the fight, and that was clear. Also on the card, we had Chev Clark move to 10-2. It's 2 losses in a row for him now. A unanimous decision loss over 12 there. He's dethroned of his British Cruiserweight title. In the other corner, the champion, Vidal Riley, now 13-0. Chev Clark cut in the 8th round by an accidental head clash. Really puzzling performance from Chev Clark. I don't know if he's lacking a bit of confidence from the last fight or something, but yeah, just a puzzling performance. I think sometimes he was just a little bit too patient. He kind of waited sometimes for Vidal Riley, and he was very flat the other night, Chev Clark. Like I say, he kind of let Vidal Riley dictate the pace, and he didn't really make it uncomfortable for him. Vidal Riley was quite happy to just keep popping the jab out and working off the jab, and really sticking to kind of textbook style boxing. And as for Chev Clark, like I say, he really struggled to put a dent at all in Vidal Riley. So I expected a hell of a lot more from Chev Clark, but we just simply didn't get it. As for Vidal Riley, it's a decent name now on his record, which took quite a while, but he's finally got, a recognisable name. It's a good win. Chev Clark finds himself in a very poor spot. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up leaving Matchroom now after that. And obviously Vidal Riley, like I say, pushes on, and Boxer have got stakes in him. So yeah, I'd like to see him obviously against some of the other domestic guys. I don't know if he's gonna be able to win the British title outright, because I can't think off the top of my head, but I'm sure there's a few good fighters there. But I wouldn't mind seeing him try, so that's what I want to see him do next. Also on the card, we had Liam Beefy Smith Returning to the ring, his first fight since 2023, it was an unsuccessful ring return. He's now 33-5 with a draw. In the other corner, Aaron McKenna, now 20-0, a unanimous decision for him over 12 rounds. McKenna had a point deducted as well in the 6th round for use of his elbow. Liam Smith was down in the 12th round and was cut as well on his right eye. What a performance from Aaron McKenna. That's what I have to say first and foremost. A big step up for him in terms of level. And again, I've said this in the past, but Aaron McKenna and Stephen McKenna, I feel like they both kind of get this, they've got this reputation of being like all-out brawlers. And I think that Stephen McKenna maybe is a little bit more of a brawler than Aaron McKenna. But the other day we saw Aaron McKenna box and move really, really nicely. And his jab was absolutely fantastic. He kept Liam Smith at range. And Liam Smith really struggled to get behind that jab, get under that jab, and get around that jab. And yeah, it was just a very mature performance from Aaron McKenna. I actually favoured Liam Smith going in. The only concern was that he hadn't boxed since 2023, but still, there was nothing wrong with Liam Smith the other night. You could see that he didn't look like, he'd lost much at all. He seemed like his old self. He was trying things that weren't working. When he was getting through, his punches weren't bothering Aaron McKenna. And Aaron McKenna, looked quite heavy-handed and obviously looked like the better fighter, really. And the size as well was with Aaron McKenna, which I think probably did play a factor. But all in all, a very, very good performance from Aaron McKenna. I was thoroughly impressed, and that for me was probably... was probably, I was going to say the best win on the card. It's right up there. Obviously, we're going to have to touch on the main event, but what a performance from Aaron McKenna. I can't stop singing his praises. Also on the card, Anthony Yard, friend of the show, moved to 27-3. Lyndon Arthur in the other corner, now 24-3, friend of the show. Unanimous decision over 12 rounds there for Anthony Yard, but a puzzling performance once again. You could say at times maybe he looked flat. You could definitely say at times he looked very tired, as did Lyndon, but it's not something I've seen too often in the past from Anthony Yard. But it was just a very grueling fight, man. It was fought on the ropes, really, literally on the ropes, probably for the last sort of maybe for the last half of the fight. Like, the whole fight was fought on the ropes, and they were just sitting there, boxing up in a phone booth. And Anthony Yard, I think, sometimes would kind of, wait for his moment, and then he'd pick a good moment to unleash an eye-catching looking combination. It wasn't all getting through. Lyndon Arthur was catching Yard with shots as well, popping his head back. It was a very kind of strange performance from Anthony Yard, because again, it was the trilogy that no one really was asking for, but we got it anyway, and they were one apiece, which, has to be said, it's a fact. But Anthony Yard walked through Lyndon Arthur in that second fight, and I felt that Lyndon Arthur had racked up a bit of mileage in between the second fight and this third fight. But credit to Lyndon Arthur, he was boxing very well as well in the early parts of the fight, but I think, his tiredness and the fact that he was on the ropes with his back up against the ropes, I think that gave the wrong impression to the judges, and Anthony Yard was sweeping many rounds consistently. So, yeah, it wasn't the kind of performance that has me licking my lips for either guy to fight again, in all honesty. Like I say, both guys are friends of the show, but I'm being completely honest. I like both guys a hell of a lot, but you look at that. You look at Josh Buatsi, who I would have loved to see Anthony Yard fight. I wanted him to look good here, then box Josh Buatsi, but he didn't really look good here. And now I'm not that well. I'd still watch it, but it's definitely lost a bit of spark the other night from that fight there. He was quite flat again. I just expected a lot more from Anthony Yard. You can't win the second fight in such devastating fashion and then go out there in the third fight and box like that. So, not much more to say on it. I don't want to be too negative, but it certainly appears like Callum Smith is head and shoulders above the rest of the guys at light heavyweight that we have in this country. Eddie, what did you see of that fight, Anthony Yard and Lyndon Arthur?
Honestly, I kind of agree with your assessment of it. You know what I mean? Bits and pieces of it was, like I said. And funny thing is, when you say that phone booth statement, I actually, was thinking that when I was watching the fight, like, damn, they ain't really moved from this one corner. They literally could have, because I was thinking about old fighters saying, oh, you could have fought this in a phone booth. And they literally was, and it was, I guess it was toward the end of the fight, you know what I mean? As Lyndon Arthur started to seem like he got a little more tired. Even if Anthony Yarde was tired, he was like pushing the pace and showing aggressiveness and was the guy coming forward. And Lyndon Arthur's on the ropes fighting off. Now, granted, he did land some good shots off the ropes periodically, but he didn't look the part. You know what I mean? When you're taking punches on the ropes and you're taking these shots, even if you come back with something decent, as you're walking back to the corner looking like you're kind of worn down or not taken apart, but look like you're the worst for wear of the two fighters. It just, to me, it just gives a bad, it's a bad look for the judges. So it was interesting fight, decent parts. They heated it up a little bit. Arthur boxed well early, but then it just looked like Anthony Yarde took over as the fight went on. So, and the decision went kind of like you would expect. You know what I mean? And, good fight, but I think both guys could have done a bit better. I mean, obviously you could say they could train harder, but would that have made a difference? Some people are just in that position when you're talking about conditioning. It's just hard for them to, hold it all the way to the end of the fight. So, and especially with that kind of pressure and, bringing in front of the somewhat hometown, crowd, you know what I mean? There's extra pressure. They've already fought twice before, and who's going to win the rubber match type thing. So, these things all play a part. So, like I said, good fight. But hopefully their careers go in a better direction than how they've gone, at least in this last fight with their trilogy.
And then moving on to the main event, Eubank Jr. now 35-3, a unanimous decision over 12 hard rounds against Benn, who loses his He's now 23-1. Eubank cut over his right eye in the 9th round, a head clash. A little bit of swelling on his eye as well. I think that the referee, can't remember who the referee was now. I think it was Victor Lachlan. I felt he was very much on Eubank's case, by the way, but that was early on. I think he was on his case quite a bit, and I was just hoping and praying that he wasn't going to take a point for anything, because I do think he was a bit harsh, but then Eubank also started to kind of push him a bit close, and I thought, oh, please don't let a point be deducted here. Please don't let that mess up the scorecards. But thankfully that didn't happen. So I'll move on to the fight itself. Very, very, very entertaining fight in my opinion, Eddie. I think it's going to be up there as a contender for fight of the year. I haven't heard anyone else say that. I don't know if I'm completely crazy by saying that, but I was thoroughly entertained. I felt it was a fight that I couldn't blink for. Every moment pretty much from the first bell was entertaining and was a war. Benn came out swinging very, very big shots. He was missing wildly. Eubank was working his jab, which was a really, really good tool. We saw that the other night as well. I don't think Eubank's really known for having a great jab, but we saw it the other night. Benn obviously was quite elusive early on with his head movement and stuff, but when Eubank was landing that jab, it was landing hard, and it was a fantastic weapon. At times, obviously, Benn would close the distance and try to unload with these eye-catching combinations. But like I say, a lot of them were hitting fresh air. And then obviously, as the fight went on, it really did turn into a complete and utter war that, again, much like the Yarde and Arthur fight, was being fought on the ropes. Not for as much time, of course, but there were moments where the pair were just on the ropes, both trying to empty the tank on each other. I just think that in the later rounds, Eubank Jr. seemed to be like, he seemed to be doing just enough to nick rounds, just outworking Benn. I think he was kind of focusing more on volume, whereas Benn was focusing more on one big shot or two big shots, Whereas Eubank just knew that he could keep hitting Conor Benn on the ropes with these uppercuts that were almost like the uppercuts you see Ryan Garcia throw when he throws like a 700 punch combination in 3 seconds. Those speedy uppercuts. He was just doing that sometimes, and Conor Benn was taking them on his chin because at that point he wasn't bothered about his defense anymore. He was looking to land a big shot, and the punches weren't really hurting him. They were just tippy-tappy shots, I think, at that point, because Eubank was so spent. Eubank showed so much heart in that fight because there were times where he did look hurt, and he battled through it. I don't know at times how he didn't go down. He took some big shots. He you could see his legs dip, you could see his legs stiffen, and he held on, and at times as well he grabbed hold of Conor Benn as well. I felt his ring experience was so clear to see. You could see that experience. He's grabbing hold of Conor Benn at times. He's falling on Conor Benn. He's holding when he needed to. He's leaning on Conor Benn. I felt that it was all stuff that you pick up from being in the ring for the number of years that Chris Eubank Jr. has been in the ring for. For me, when they were getting ready to announce the decision, I felt that I think I tweeted at the time saying there's no way in the world they can give this to Conor Benn, even though I felt like the boxing gods wanted Conor Benn to get the win. I feel like they've been very understanding of Conor Benn's situation, and I didn't like the weight, the weight clause, the rehydration clause, and all the rest of it, the fines for the egg cracking and all that. I don't like all that. I think that Conor Benn has benefited from most of that, and it just doesn't really sit right with me. Like Conor Benn celebrating that Eubank Jr. missed the weight by 0.05 of a gram or whatever it was, and then he goes and gets a £375 fine. It just didn't sit right with me. But moving on, like I say, we're probably going to get the rematch. I feel like that fight probably took more out of Eubank Jr. though than it did Conor Benn, so I'm not entirely sure I want to see the rematch, in all honesty, but hopefully Eubank can pull it off again. I mean, yeah, or it just doesn't happen at all. I'm sure that if the Canelo fight came knocking for Chris Eubank Jr., he'd jump on that. Obviously, Canelo's boxing this weekend, so that's I'm sure they'll kind of both be ready, really. If they were both to fight each other next. And Canelo has said, I think this week, that he promises to deliver the UK fight fans a fight in the UK before he retires. So, yeah, there aren't many names. He's been in with your Callum Smiths and your Billy Joe Saunders, your John Ryders, all these guys. So there's not many guys left for him to fight in the UK. It doesn't look like it's going to be Anthony Yarde. It doesn't look like it's going to be Josh Buatsi. So yeah, maybe it will wind up being Chris Eubank Jr. Anyway, that was my thoughts on the fight, Eddie. What did you make of it before we wrap up the review part?
Now, it was, I think, a hell of a fight as far as the excitement goes. I think they both just let it all hang out, so to speak. It was, as far as excitement, what you would have hoped for from, this second generation scrap, you know what I mean? This second generation kind of rivalry. They brought the best out in each other as far as, when it comes to, just all things boxing and toughness and, and grit and determination. It was good. It was good to see it from, their fathers had a great rivalry as well as with them too. So it kind of followed suit. It was awesome to see. Funny, it's just, I think it's like you said, there was a lot of benefit for Conor Benn being that he was such a smaller guy coming up to the heavier weight, which in those cases, a lot of people say, oh, well, the bigger guys always got to be favored. And I say not always. And in this case, he had, he missed the weight by a little bit. He had to get, he had to pay and all of that. Then on top of that, he had to lose the weight, which he probably didn't have much to lose, but he found a way to get it off. And that could play to his level of strength during the fight. So, how much of Chris Eubank was really in there, you know what I mean? Aside from, like as far as power and strength is concerned up to that point. That doesn't take anything away from what Conor Benn was able to do. And, maybe even if Chris Eubank was at full strength, which he very well could have been, it might have been the same kind of situation. But I give credit to Conor Benn showing the heart, being a smaller man and really being, you could see the hurt in Eubank more than you could see it in Benn as far as, the shots that Conor Benn was throwing and landing. It looked more like if Conor Benn landed that perfect shot or landed a good shot that you could possibly see, not possibly. I think it's happened a few times during a fight, but it looked like if he landed that one shot, you know what I mean? Even though he's a 47 coming up all the way up to 60, it looked like he could have hurt Eubank to the point of maybe even, not necessarily maybe stopping him, but definitely putting him down. You know what I mean? So, credit to him for showing his strength, determination, and grit and all that, and even in skill. And early on, defensively, was being it just looked more explosive and sharper early on. But as the fight wore on, Eubank and what they say is the cream rises to the top, and eventually Chris Eubank, his experience and his skill and his understanding of range, like I remember you were saying, Joe, and yours is that was Eubank known for having a great jab, and I think when you're an experienced fighter, you figure out what works for that particular fight, and in this case, Conor Benn's smaller, shorter, not as arms isn't as long. You know what I mean? Doesn't have the experience that he does. So, maybe the jab was the punch that would set them apart, at least in certain spots in the fight. And I think that's what happened in this fight. He was starting to use the jab early. Then as the fight got into the championship level rounds and all of that, it took more than just, strategy as far as who's going to win those rounds. And like you said during yours, I think Conor Benn. I think Chris Eubank was probably taking the rounds here, just from sheer volume and energy, and even though he looked like he was a little tired, looked like some of the shots started bothering him, he just kept coming back. And I think in the end, that's what won him the fight. The fight was close-ish, but when I really watch, when you really pay attention, it just looks like Eubank won it. Not going away, but he definitely won it clearly, I think. So, excellent fight. Like I said, second generation, war with them, and it was just an awesome thing to see. And when you said you weren't really interested in seeing the rematch, it's like that filled the void of this fight that was supposed to happen before, and you know what I mean, and who won, and it just looked like Eubank was a little bit, not out of the league, but he's just a little bit better, when it comes to that. Would it even be interesting to have another fight, and would anything be different? And I understand why you said possibly not being interested in having another one because of those reasons, thinking just Eubank might just be, a little bit, not too much, but, a little bit better to the degree that we just won't get a chance to really see Benn do anything more than, what he's done in this past fight. So, I mean, although be a great fight to see with the excitement, but if we already know the outcome, how interesting really can it be? So, great fight. I hope their careers continue in a good direction, even if it means coming back with them too again.
And that wraps up the review part of the show. It's now time to welcome this week's special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome top boxing contender and my very good friend is, of course, Mr. Mykal Fox. Mike, welcome back on the show, my brother.
Thank you, Joey. Thanks for having me again.
Hey, the pleasure is always mine, my friend. So, Mike, we last spoke back in July. It was just after the Don Ward fight. How have things been since then, my friend?
Things have been good. After the Don Ward fight, I stayed in the gym. I took a little break, but I stayed in the gym. Sparred some people, helped them get ready for their fights and whatnot. And then I fought November 9th. I fought a guy. He was a last minute replacement. It was a fight him or don't fight at all type of situation. After going through about 4 opponents on the fight week, not even just because the fighters were like 2 of the fighters got injured, 1 of the fighters wouldn't get approved. and then they approved this guy, and it was just that one was actually a pretty stressful fight night for me actually. But we still got the W, and I got 2 fights in last year for the first time in 2 years.
There we go. And I was going to ask you as well if you're still with Tony Jetta, which you are.
Yeah, I'm still with Tony Jetta. This will be our 3rd fight together. It's coming up in May. So, I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the activity, and this one's a big opportunity.
Yeah, for sure, man. Let's get to it. May 17th, you'll be boxing in California against Serhii Bohachuk. Obviously, you're moving to 154 for this fight, Mike. You've got the height for it. That goes without saying. Is this just a one-off fight at the weight, or is this where you're going to be at now?
I would say I didn't make. I haven't made like long-term decisions. I want to see how my body feels at the weight class. It's actually because I got word through my promoter that they said Serhii hadn't been in the gym, so they said they asked to move the weight up to 157. I told them pay me more money, and they accepted my terms, and so we'll fight. The fight is a catch weight of 157, but like I said, still like got the height. My skill set's going up in weight with me, so I still look forward to the challenge. It's still a big opportunity, especially especially when I get the W. And I can say he ain't even coming in 54, and that's a feather in the cap.
Oh, for sure it is, man. Obviously, Serhii Bohachuk. What are your thoughts on him as a fighter? Obviously, he's a massive puncher, but we saw a lot more than just the punching power when he boxed Virgil Ortiz. That was a very good fight. I'm assuming. Well, in fact, let me not get to what I assume. Tell me what you think about him as a fighter, firstly.
Well, I mean, he's a great fighter. He's former interim WBC world champion. I've watched several of his fights. I've watched the Ortiz fight a bunch of times. There's a lot of things he does well. He doesn't really fall in over his feet. He applies pressure. He works behind his jab. He does a lot of good things in the ring. So he's a great fighter. That's why I accepted the fight. A win here makes me a great fighter as well.
I was going to say, I'm assuming that because when I think about this fight in my brain, I can't see an alternative game plan than one where you will attempt to keep him behind your jab, to keep him at range and outbox him at distance. That's the obvious game plan that pops in my head. How accurate can you say I am, Mike?
Pretty spot on. You're pretty spot on, to be honest. I think there are going to be moments where the entire time in a perfect night, he'll be at the end of my jab, and he'll be at a range he can't deal with that suits me more. But rather I'm fighting off the back foot or on the front foot, I want it to be that's what I want. I want him at the end of my jab and trying to figure out how to close the distance, because I don't think he's used to being the shorter man. He's he has I have like a 5-inch or 4-inch wing reach advantage against him, and I plan on using all of it.
Yeah, for sure. And like I say, you can box on the inside as well. We've seen that from you and your brother. Sometimes it frustrates the life out of me when Tez does it, but you guys can box on the inside, that's for sure. I wanted to ask you, Mike, if you happened to see the fight over the weekend, Eubank Benn, what did you make of that if you did?
I did see it. It was a fight. It was a really good fight. It was hyper competitive. It was everything it needed to be. I mean, I think Chris Eubank got the win because Conor, he threw big shots and he landed some big shots throughout the fight. But I think Chris Eubank's shots weren't as big, but he was consistently landing more. Maybe they weren't the most damaging. Some of them he may have hurt him a couple times, but he's just like, what he really showed is that Conor has a little trouble getting past the jab. I mean, Chris is tall, but and Connor's moving his head. He's coming in, but like Chris Eubank had the jab time very well. I think it was offsetting I think it was offsetting Connor's Connor's game plan. Whatever he was planning to do when he got close, he couldn't get close as regularly as he wanted to. Mind you, Chris Eubank missed weight, and it probably zapped him a bit. And he was subject to a rehydration clause and everything. So they might have took his legs from him a little bit, but he still got through it. I think he got through it just through clean punching.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with all of that. And I wanted to ask you as well, just about the welterweight division, because obviously you're not entirely sure. You may end up back there. We obviously saw the unification between Boots Ennis and Imantis Stanionis. Do you feel that Boots is now kind of head and shoulders above the other guys at 147, or what's your thoughts?
I think as far as the other champions, Boots is. I honestly thought Stanionis had the best chance of beating him. I think Mario Barrios wouldn't beat him because he's too flat-footed. And Brian Norman, I've shared the ring with him. I feel like he, they say about that Boots gets hit too much. I think Brian Norman gets hit too much. Even in his fight against Giovanni Santillan, he landed harder, better punches, but he still took some punches of his own. So I think the last champion I was going to be able to challenge Boots was Stanionis. The other two, I like Boots. I like Boots' chances a lot against them.
Okay. And this Friday, the Times Square card live on DAZN. We've obviously got a few kind of crazy fights here. We got Ryan Garcia against Rolly Romero, Devin Haney against Jose Ramirez, and of course Teofimo Lopez against Arnold Barboza. I'm sure you're going to be watching it. Which fight out of those three? I'm kind of asking you three questions in one here, but which fight are you looking forward to most? Why? And who wins that particular fight?
I think honestly, it's got to be the Barboza Teofimo fight. It has, like Teofimo's. He's been. I mean, he's loopy. He's always loopy. He's just loopy these days. But when it's time to show up, more times than not, he's shown up. But Barboza is on a mission, because Barboza was with Top Rank for a long time. Probably got passed up by. Teofimo. I mean, he's probably waited for a chance to kind of really break out. This is his moment. So, actually, the fight with Jack Catterall was a bit of his moment, a big moment. But since then, I think this one's a little more personal to him. We were with the same promoter, and they shot, and they put a rocket on your back, and they shot you up to the top, while I was here waiting behind this guy, waiting behind that fighter. And I think I think Barboza is a little more personal for Barboza. I want him to win, but Teofimo, we've seen Teofimo in these moments is he's turned it up, but he's sometimes he's hot, sometimes he's cold. So I mean, we have to see what Teofimo shows up. I think we know Barboza's showing up. It's a bigger deal for him, but we got to see what Teofimo shows up this time.
Your analysis is so good, man, honestly. I honestly thought that was excellent, the way you answered that question. It's definitely the most competitive fight of the three, in my opinion. And you're right, Arnold Barboza, beating Jose Ramirez, beating Jack Catterall in the UK. He's on a heck of a run, and Teofimo Lopez can be somewhat inconsistent, which makes it even more exciting for me. I always like to ask you this as well, Mike, how your brother's doing? I sent him a text yesterday. I spoke to him just briefly, but it's been over a year since we last saw him in a pro ring. I know he's enjoying dad life, but what can you tell us? Are we going to hear any news on him?
We'll see. He's getting adjusted to being, to the dad life, to being a father, to, basically essentially sharing his time with someone that, that needs it. As much as he wants to get back in the ring and everything, he has a daughter, a newborn. I'm an uncle. Happy about that. We just told him, man, he got to look. Take your time. Let her get your schedule kind of established, and then we, maybe a little later in the year we can talk about you fight. We can talk about you potentially fighting again. But right now, she needs you more than more than the ring does right now. You got so get yourself situated so you can take a proper charge at this. Don't do it when we don't want to hear oh man, the baby had this and I couldn't sleep that and blah blah and this and that. Those are legitimate excuses, but they're not going to want to hear it. No one's going to want to hear it. You know what I mean? He's training as much as he can. He's still in there. He's still running. And he's like in the doing strength conditioning. He's in the gym a little. His gym attendance is a little sporadic right now, but like I said, that's what having a newborn to do to you. But he wants it. We talk all the time. He wants to be back in the ring. He says, "Man, I miss it," and I'm telling you, that's good for you. It's good that you still miss it. Some people, are out of the ring for as long, and it becomes easy to just be like, you know what? Yeah, nah, it's okay. I don't need to go to the gym. But he misses the gym, and that's so I think he's honestly in a good headspace. He just needs to fix his schedule a little bit.
Oh, fantastic, man. Fantastic to hear that. And yeah, the little words that we have had, he seems like he's really in love with being a dad, which is excellent. And, I'm a girl dad as well, so I can relate to him there, man. Just before we wrap things up, Mike, if you've got any closing words to the listeners, like I say, your family on this podcast, it's always great having you on. Yeah,
well, man, I just want to say thank you to everybody that, supports the podcast. I want to say big thank you to you personally, Joey. You were one of the first people. I know you were my first international interview ever, and I mean, it's been it's always fantastic to hear from you. As soon as I finally got back active, you were one of the first people that called. I just want to say, man, thank you to everybody that's been supporting. Thank you to if you're in LA, May 17th, man, pull up to the Commerce Casino. We're taking on Serhii Bohachuk. You don't want to miss. It's going to be a great fight. And follow me on Instagram and X now at Professor Mike. And you can keep up with everything I got going on.
There we go. Go follow him on both platforms. Mike, it really is my pleasure whenever we speak. I truly mean that. Thanks so much for your time. Best of luck for May 17th in California, and we'll speak sometime afterwards, my brother.
For sure. I'm counting on it.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. We're going to start here with a fight that's been made for June 14th. We have Richardson Hitchens stepping in the ring with George Kambosos Jr. Both guys friends at a show. That's a big fight there that's been made at the theater in the Madison Square Garden, New York. George Kambosos still claims that he's the king of New York. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting. There's been a lot of build up on social media of that one. We'll talk more about it when it's closer to happening. We also have Jesse Bam Rodriguez stepping in with Fumalele Cafu. I think that's how his name is said. But yeah, that is a unification there. That one's going to be going down on July 19th. At the Star in Frisco, Texas. So yeah, that'll be a good one there, like I say. So those are 2 fights that have been made by Matchroom Boxing. They're going to be live on DAZN. In other news, we have the undisputed fight for all of the belts at heavyweight. We have obviously Alexander Usyk stepping in a rematch with Daniel Dubois. That one to go down on the 19th of July as well. That one to go down at the Wembley Stadium. They're hoping for 80 plus 90,000 fans in attendance. So it's going to be an interesting rematch. Has Usyk, has he kind of gone further down the slide? Perhaps. We certainly know that Daniel Dubois has definitely increased his confidence levels, and now he feels extremely confident going in. And obviously he's got the home advantage as well, so that's something he didn't have last time, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure he had to travel for it. Could be wrong. Can't remember now. Do you remember, Eddie? Did Daniel Dubois have to? I'm sure he did. I don't feel like that fight was in the UK. Let me check.
Yeah. I think it was.
He had to go to Poland for that fight. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I knew something wasn't right. So yeah, anyway, gets the home advantage here, and yeah, it's in the same It's in the same venue that he stopped Anthony Joshua just 6 months ago or 7 months ago, whatever it was. So that's going to be a good one. We'll talk more about that obviously closer to the time. Again, we're going to try to whiz through this preview part of the show. This one goes down tomorrow, Friday the 2nd in Times Square, New York, USA. It's going to be live on DAZN. I think it's on DAZN pay-per-view, which is crazy. I'm hoping it's not pay-per-view in the UK. Gosh. But on the undercard, well, I don't even think there is an undercard. You know, the whole thing is about 3 main fights that are all good fights, Eddie. We're going to have to really whiz through it, but let's just skim through and talk about what ones jump out at us here. We got Ryan Garcia, 24-1, returning to the ring for the first time since the drug scandal, and beating Devin Haney. So he's 24-1. He steps in with Rolly Romero, 16-2. That's over 12 rounds at welterweight. Ryan Garcia up at 147. We also have Devin Haney, 31-0. He's got his O back because obviously the loss to Ryan Garcia was scrubbed out. He's back in the ring for the first time. He steps in with Jose Ramirez, 29-2, coming off a loss to Arnold Barboza Jr. Arnold Barboza Jr. also on the card, 32-0, coming off a fantastic win in the UK against Jack Catterall. This one for the WBO World Super Lightweight title against Teofimo Lopez, 21-1. Wow. They're 3 good fights, in my opinion. I think that the Teofimo Lopez fight is probably the most competitive. I really am intrigued to see how that one goes, because Arnold Barboza is definitely, riding a wave at the moment. I feel like he has been so impressive. After, in my opinion, losing to Sean McComb, clearly he's gone on a heck of a run, and he's beaten, like I say, Jose Ramirez, beaten Jack Catterall, and he's just unstoppable at the moment. But he is in with a very talented Teofimo Lopez, who can be extremely inconsistent, despite only having one loss, by the way, to George Kambosos. He's won all the other fights, but again, some of them, I'm not too sure. Devin Haney against Jose Ramirez. I think Devin Haney's going to be too sharp for Ramirez. I actually backed Barboza to beat Ramirez, even though Barboza was the underdog in their fight, but I just feel like Ramirez doesn't have too much left. I think Devin Haney's going to be too fresh for him, and he's going to win very clearly. I think he's going to dominate him. Also, Ryan Garcia against Rolly Romero. That's an interesting fight because I think both guys can punch, but you would favour Garcia just for being a bit tidier, I would probably say. Eddie, add to any of that if you wish, but like I say, we have to be quick.
I agree with the assessment with Romero and Garcia, because Romero's tough, and you remember they had that spar wars, years ago, with them two. So there's some kind of little, they got something between them. You know what I mean? And then, I've been listening to some of the things with Ryan Garcia and Rolly and what how they're talking in the build-up. But yeah, Ryan Garcia is a little bit better skill fighter. You know what I mean? He's been on a run. Not I want to say a run, but he's been better recently, you know what I mean? Looking a little more to be, just a better fighter as you go forward. Obviously, Rolly hasn't had as much success recently, losing, getting stopped by Cruz and all of those things. And then, losing the fight before with Tank, and they're not looking great with I don't want to call him the old guy because I'm older than him, but you know what I'm saying? So he's had a rough go of it recently, you know what I mean? But if he's able to get in there with clear and extreme confidence, even after that kind of a situation, after that run, then he's just he's a special guy. But as far as the other 2 fights, Arnold Barboza, I would expect there would be, in I don't know, because Teofimo is. He can show up once. He can show up and be great, or he can show up and the other time too with what's the guy's name? from Spain. Goddamn, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. What's his name?
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah, I'm struggling to remember it too.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm sitting there.
I don't want to check it.
Yeah.
Sandor Martin.
I was just about to say Sandor Martin. And it's not to say that Sandor Martin wasn't the reason that he didn't look great that night, because Sandor Martin's a good fighter himself. But, you're a Teofimo Lopez. You're supposed to be the man, especially, at this stage, in your career. So for him not to look that good and get a decision that might have been considered a gift, it just shows that, some of the inconsistency. So him going in with this Arnold Barboza guy, he's really trying to, he's really on the upswing. He's been looking good recently and looking dangerous. So to be honest, if I'm going to favor somebody just at last looks, I would say I would probably favor Arnold Barboza. But as far as talent and what they've been able to do in their career and what you would have expected after like that fight with Lomachenko and how he's supposed to improve as you go on. You know what I mean? It's just unfortunate that it hasn't gone that way for him at this point. But right now, I would have to favor Arnold Barboza. But yeah, with Devin Haney, Devin Haney is a very talented fighter. Obviously the issues that happened recently with the Ryan Garcia fight and all of the suing and all of the crap that's going back, can it mentally affect him? Possibly, but I don't think enough to where he can't show up and outbox this kid that he's fighting, which I'm not saying that he's not good, the other kid, but he's just not, I don't think, on the level of, especially as a boxer, of what Devin Haney is. So, yeah, good card. Seems like a lot of fights to talk about, but yeah, just the future, and obviously the Garcia-Haney rematch. That I think that what they're aiming for to happen is really what a lot of this is about. So yeah, good situation. Looking forward to the fight, to be honest. Or the fights, to be honest.
Yeah, and there's more to look forward to because we move now to Saturday at the venue Riyadh Season in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Over here we have on the undercard, Jaime Munguia, 44-2, looking to avenge his defeat to Bruno Sorachi, who pulled off, upset of the year 2024. So they're getting it on here in Saudi Arabia following the rematch. Following the first fight in Mexico. Bruno Sorachi obviously still undefeated, 26-0 with 2 draws. Hadn't boxed really anyone of note at all till he stepped in with Munguia and was losing every second of the fight till he landed the punch of his life. So that rematch will be on the undercard. We also have Martin Bakole, 21-2, stepping in with Efia Jagba, 20-1. That one's still going ahead. Bakole coming off that second round defeat to Joseph Parker. All the travelling he was doing in the build-up to that, you just wonder how much of a decent camp he's had. It wasn't ideal, but he was looking at the dollar signs, and you can't really blame him. But yeah, that's an interesting fight. Efia Jagba is the underdog, which again, I can understand why, but I just think based on that fight with Parker and all of the travelling and just how he looked, he didn't look good at all. He looked big. I just wonder if there might be some smart money to go on Efia Jagba. We also have Badu Jack stepping in the ring, defending his WBC Cruiserweight World title. It's mad that he's still champion of the world. He's been very inactive, hasn't boxed for over a year. He's 28-3 with 3 draws. He steps in with Noel Gavor, who's 27-2, but a true cruiserweight. And Noel Gavor is actually the slight favourite, but they've got that very, very close in the bookies. And the main event, Saul Canelo Alvarez, 62-2-2. This one for the IBF, the WBC, and the WBO super middleweight world titles. He steps in with the undefeated 23-0 William Skoll, who is a German fighter, like I say, well, a Cuban fighter, but based in Germany, 32 years of age. And yeah, coming off a good win last time out against Vladimir Shishkin, but obviously he is a guy that has only kind of come to come to recognition in recent times. So he's not someone that, certainly for me anyway, not someone I've kind of been watching for a long time. It's a guy that's just popped up out of nowhere, in my opinion. We know that he was sparring with Benn in the build-up to this fight, and in Nigel Benn's words, he said that William Skull quit in sparring against Benn, which I don't like. I don't really like that stuff. I don't really like people talking too much about sparring, especially to media, which Nigel Benn come out and did. But apparently that wasn't the case when hearing a response video from William Skull's manager. So anyway, it is what it is. I mean, the win against Vladimir Shishkin doesn't tell me that he can hang with Canelo, and I would actually expect Canelo to get a stoppage here. In all honesty, I think he's gonna get a stoppage for the first time since his stoppage over Caleb Plant back in 2021. I'm expecting this one to be a stoppage for Canelo Alvarez. It's a mammoth step up for William Skull, but credit to him for getting a nice payday. But yeah, Canelo, he's been looking really good in recent fights as well. Canelo seems like he's kind of got his mojo back a little bit. The win against Munguia, the win against Berlanga. Yeah, I'm really liking what I'm seeing from Canelo after some people felt that he was on the slide a little bit. Again, Eddie, we don't have much time, but if you've got anything to add to any of those fights there before we move on to yet another card.
Yeah, don't really know too much about,
William Skull.
William Skull is who's fighting Canelo. So it's really hard for me to make any judgment. I hear the sparring rumors with them too, as far as Conor Benn and him. But I mean, sparring is sparring, fighting is fighting. So we don't know what that's gonna be, and he's getting in there with one of the best, to do it, in Canelo. So it's kind of, does that even matter? You know what I mean? I guess it depends on the matchup. It depends on how things are gonna be when they face off in the ring. All the other crap that goes along with it, the sparring war shit, that to me it means something if the guy's like out of shape in camp and not quite able to just hang in general, then that's a different story. But if they're going back and forth and it's just it's just bull crap, just something to talk about, something to stir up some controversy. So but other than that, seems a good card. Going to be interested to see boxing 2 days in a row. Two quality cards with a lot of talent on it. It's worth it. It's good for boxing. Hopefully more of this is going to happen, especially with the Friday and then the Saturday being two big cards. Hopefully that can happen more often in the near future.
Well, the Friday and the Saturday, don't neglect the Sunday just yet. I'm gonna come to you about that because I know that it's definitely gone over your head. But yeah, I thought you might have something to say just briefly on that Bakole and a Jagba fight on the undercard, Eddie.
Damn, I can't believe I neglected that in the spirit of trying to hurry up, you know what I mean, or get through it. But yes, that is a very interesting fight. I've always been a little more critical of a Jagba when it comes to, because he has ability, but he's just really basic, and but he's still a hard hitter. Has boxing skill. It might be very basic, but sometimes that's all you need. In the heavyweight division, being 6'6" or 6'5" as he is, it doesn't really require, and a big puncher and pretty rangy at times. It doesn't necessarily require, much more than that. But now you're getting in there with Bakole. Now Bakole, like you said, has recently had a marathon going on in his life. With the other fight and getting stopped by Joe Parker not too long ago. But at the same time, you got to make the move for the money. It makes sense, for him at the time. But it's just, is it going to affect the performance, and did it affect the training? So it's just an unfortunate situation, but you know what I mean? He had to do it, and we're going to see what happens in this fight. If I'm going to, pick, I'm going to definitely go Jagba. It's just a lot to do in a small amount of time, and then being stopped. It's just
wait,
it's
going with who?
I would say for the mental edge, I'm definitely going to Jagba. But is that going to happen in the fight? You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure. But it's going to be it's going to be a wild one. You know what I mean? Because I think a Jagba punches hard enough to really get the respect, to say the least. from Bacoli. So yeah, interesting fight. I'm looking forward to that one too. That's probably the most interesting and appetizing fight for me to want to watch on the entire card. So yeah, looking forward to it.
And like I say, if the Friday and Saturday wasn't enough, Eddie, then we move to Sunday at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. We're going to start straight with a main event. Naoya Inoue, 29-0, stepping in the ring in the US, which a lot of fight fans have wanted him, to box in the US, selfishly. He's back there, 29-0. This one for all the belts. He steps in with Ramon Cardenas, who is 26-1. The bookies are massively expecting Inoue to stop Cardenas. I'm going to hold my hands up and say I haven't really seen anything of Cardenas. I do just want to look into his record just briefly. 14 KOs, couple of decent wins actually, to be honest with you. He's not a mug, that's for sure. Not at all. But the bookies are heavily expecting him to get the stoppage here. He is a Samson Lukowicz fighter though. That's he doesn't really get involved with with too many bad fighters. But yeah, Inoue the massive favourite. We also have on the undercard Rafael Espinoza, a man that we touched on just briefly last week for being, a 6'1" featherweight. He steps in the ring with Edward Vasquez in a defence of his WBO featherweight world title. Vasquez 17-2 and Espinoza 26-0 with 22 KOs. He really just brings something so new really to the featherweight division. That size and obviously the power. Like I say, 22 KOs from his 26 wins. He's such a problem. As for Edward Vasquez, again, people might remember the name. He lost a majority decision to Joe Cordina for Cordina's IBF super featherweight world title in Monaco. It was a really close fight. And some people felt that Cordina was quite lucky to hold on to his belt. So since then he's gone away, picked up 2 wins, and he gets in with Espinoza here. So it's not really getting much credit because there's so many big fights this weekend, but it's a good fight, I think. We also have on the card Rais Alim, 21-1, stepping in with Rudy Garcia, 13-1. We also have Emiliano Vargas, 13-0, stepping in with Juan Leon, who is 11-2 with a draw. That one's over 8 rounds. And then last but not least, we have Rohan Polanco, 15-0, stepping in with brother of Marcos, Fabian Maidana, 24-3, who you're a bit of a fan of, Eddie. That one's over 10 rounds there. Rohan Polanco's a very, very good fighter, and I can't wait to see how that fight unfolds. I think that's a really interesting fight, to be honest with you. So that's a few good fights there on the Sunday. So it really is a boxing marathon, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. What was you going to say, Eddie, before we move on to the last card?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. The whole weekend, including Sunday. They working like me this weekend. 7 days a week. I like it. Well, not 7 days, but at least 3 days in the weekend. So yeah, that's like working 7 days. But yeah, awesome weekend for boxing.
Yeah, when you think about the names, Teofimo Lopez, Devin Haney, Ryan Garcia, Jose Ramirez, Arnold Barboza, Canelo, Badu Jack, Munguia, Bacoli, Inoue, Rafael Espinoza. It really is a crazy few days. But we move now to maybe the craziest of crazies. Tuesday the 6th of May, Eddie, at the Texas Theater in Nashville, Tennessee, USA, we have returned to the ring for former heavyweight world champion Oliver McCall, 61-14. He is now 60 years of age. He's back in a 6-rounder against Carlos Reyes, who's 7-17 with 2 draws. Carlos Reyes hasn't won a fight since 2015. He's lost for 10 years straight. But I tell you, some of the names he's been in with were really shocking when I looked at it. He's been in with Ishmael Salak. He's been in with Uniel Daltakos. He's been in with Unieski Gonzalez, Michael Sills. He's been in with Israel Dufus, Frank Sanchez as well. So quite a few names there. He's lost to most of them guys, if not all by KO. And he is coming off 6 KOs all within 4 rounds. 6 KO losses all within 4 rounds. He steps in with Oliver McCall, 61-14 with 6 not with 6, over 6 rounds. So, 61-14. It's a 6-rounder here for former champion Oliver McCall at the ripe old age of 60. Still wouldn't want to look at him the wrong way. But I don't want him to carry on fighting. Hopefully this is the final fight. It will be his 76th fight. Just please, Oliver, leave it alone, my friend. Anyway, that wraps up the preview part of the show. In part 1, we did the review part. Then we welcomed our special guest, the ever-friendly Mykal Fox, the giant of the 140 division. Or, well, he's at 147 now. And for this fight, he's at 154. So what am I talking about? In part 2, we did the news. Then we did the preview part. The final thing for me to do is to come in with the outro, which I'll do in just a few seconds. Okay, and this wraps up episode 497 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Eddie Chambers has been with me for the duration of the show. A massive thank you to this week's special guest, that man being top boxing contender, Mr. Mykal Fox. The biggest thanks of all goes out to you, the listeners. Thanks once again for tuning in. That is about everything now from myself. Enjoy your Friday, your Saturday, and your Sunday. We'll see you all again same time next week. Goodbye.